Special Reports is a daily show that will cover issues surrounding the economic collapse. All our reports and daily alert news are backed up by source links. We work very hard to bring you the facts, and we research everything before presenting the report. Subscribe for latest on financial crisis, oil price, global economic collapse, dollar collapse, gold, silver, Bitcoin, global reset, new world order, economic collapse, economic news, political, geopolitical news. Today, we talk about martial law is no conspiracy, something big is going on. Former U.S. Congressman and Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul joins Alex Jones of Infowars, talk with us about one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation to come across Congress in a long time. What Jones calls soft, creeping, frog in the pool. We learn here that martial law in America is no conspiracy theory, as even Democratic Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut is calling S.J. Res. 29 or Declaration of International Martial Law, as seen in his speech in the second video below in full. With a global economy now in freefall and even stores in the U.S. beginning to feel the hit, as shared in this news story from SHTFPLAN's Jeremiah Johnson, who tells us about store inventory levels being reduced nationwide. The warning to stock up now while we still can rings out loud and true, especially with talk of martial law now in the air and within U.S. Congress. Senator Murphy's warning to America should not go unheeded, and Ron Paul completely backs up his warning and goes beyond what Murphy has told us as outlined below. Quotes, "This resolution is a total rewrite of the War Powers Clause of the Constitution. Let's be clear about that," Democrat Senator Chris Murphy said on the Senate floor last week in regards to S.J. Res. 29, a bill purporting to give the sitting U.S. president the power to declare war on ISIS. It is essentially a declaration of international martial law, Murphy said. A sweeping transfer of military power to the president that will allow him or her to send U.S. troops almost anywhere in the world for any reason with absolutely no limitations, Senator Murphy described, adding that Article I, Section 8, Clause 11 of the Constitution vests in Congress the responsibility to declare war. While the ink is still wet on this resolution, it's safe to say that this resolution is the wrong way to authorize war against ISIS, Murphy said. The language of this resolution is dangerous and it is unprecedented. The American people certainly don't want Congress to hand over the power to the president to send our troops into any country anywhere in the world for almost any reason. And that's what this resolution would do. With Senator Lindsey Graham among the 4 co-sponsors of this bill, Ron Paul warned on his own website that if this open-ended war authorization is passed, the U.S. Constitution will have become all but a dead letter. Do we really want Barack Obama, or any other president for that matter, to have the ability to do whatever they want with our military, including deploying them against the American people within our own country? From Ron Paul. While the Washington snowstorm dominated news coverage this week, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was operating behind the scenes to rush through the Senate what may be the most massive transfer of power from the legislative to the executive branch in our history. The senior senator from Kentucky is scheming, along with Senator Lindsey Graham, to bypass normal Senate procedure to fast-track legislation to grant the president the authority to wage unlimited war for as long as he or his successors may wish. The legislation makes the unconstitutional Iraq War authorization of 2002 look like a walk in the park. It will allow this president and future presidents to wage war against ISIS without restrictions on time, geographic scope, or the use of ground troops. It is a completely open-ended authorization for the president to use the military as he wishes for as long as he or she wishes. Even President Obama has expressed concern over how willing Congress is to hand him unlimited power to wage war. The purpose of the legislative branch of our government is to restrict the executive branch's power. The founders understood that an all-powerful king who could wage war at will was the greatest threat to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is why they created the People's Branch, the Congress, to prevent the emergence of an all-powerful autocrat to drag the country to endless war. Sadly, Congress is surrendering its power to declare war. Let's be clear, if Senate Majority Leader McConnell succeeds in passing this open-ended war authorization, the U.S. Constitution will be all but a dead letter. While most Americans are likely clueless about the possibility of martial law in our near future, it's very easy to see the possible future need for it for that very reason. Most Americans are either dependent upon the government to survive in 2016 America or are struggling themselves in this economy with little time to pay attention to the global economy falling apart, much less prepare themselves and their families for what's likely to come. When it all hits the fan and the meltdown is complete, millions of people in all of the big cities across America will likely be totally unprepared, and has been reported many times on AMP and across the alternative news. Massive civil unrest and the total breakdown of society are strong possibilities that the government will have to contend with if it manages to stay intact. From CBS Los Angeles just today we learned that the LAPD is warning the people of Los Angeles to prepare for longer than usual emergency response times and advising them to prepare to protect themselves. They say more officers are necessary. We also learned today from the New York Times that rationing has begun in America, and we should expect that shortages will be the new normal in medicine. Across the country more signs of collapse emerge daily that help to prove to us that not only will martial law likely be put into place, but for very good reason once the collapse enters breakneck speed. Without law and order in the big cities of America during total collapse, they'll quickly turn into death zones. As Ron Paul and Alex Jones proved to us in this video, of course martial law isn't a conspiracy theory. It may indeed one day be the rule of law in America, and some argue it already is, as the country completes its financial plummet and likely hundreds of millions of Americans go completely unprepared for the outcome. Of course, for our friends and families and loved ones and first responders and Americans across the country, we pray that this never happens in America. We'd be ignorant and foolish, though, to ignore the warning signs and to avoid preparing our own selves and families for the eventual outcome that comes about as the economy prepares to hit rock bottom. We'd like to think that those Americans who are prepared for such events will be assets to the authorities who impose martial law, as the prepared won't be looting the stores and robbing their neighbors, but will be staying away from the madness as best we can. We need to be ready for it though. As we are warned here, the big event is in our sight. We see Duterte considers martial law for entire Philippines. The Philippine president has threatened to impose martial law nationwide to combat a serious threat in the southern region of Mindanao after fighters there beheaded the police officer and took churchgoers hostage. The ongoing violence has forced thousands to flee the city of Marawi, located about 816 kilometers south of the capital Manila. I will not hesitate to do anything and everything to protect and preserve the Filipino nation, Rodrigo Duterte said on Wednesday after arriving back in Manila from his trip to Russia. I might declare martial law throughout the country to protect the people. Duterte declared martial law on Tuesday in Mindanao, which makes up roughly one-third of the Philippines and is home to 20 million people, in an immediate response to the attacks by the fighters. The military claimed to have killed at least 13 fighters, members of groups that have pledged allegiance to the Islamic State of Iraq and the group. The roughly 100 attackers roamed through Marawi, killing 5 soldiers, taking a priest and an unspecified number of other people hostage from a church, setting fire to buildings and flying Black Asil flags, according to Duterte and his aides. Duterte said the fighters beheaded the local police chief after capturing him at a road checkpoint. Local television station GMA News also published exclusive images of 9 civilians, who were reportedly killed by the armed fighters. ABS-CBN television channel also quoted the Interior Ministry as saying that the fighters managed to take control of the city jail and freed 107 prisoners. The violence first erupted on Tuesday after the army raided the hideout of Ismalan Hapilon, a commander of the Abla-Sayaf group. Abla-Sayaf then called for reinforcements from an allied group, the MOT, and dozens of fighters managed to enter Marawi, home to about 200,000 people. In ensuing clashes with the attackers, security personnel lost 3 of their comrades. The attackers reportedly burned the Catholic church, the city jail, and 2 schools, as well as occupied the main streets and 2 bridges leading to Marawi. Archbishop Socrates Villegas, president of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, said the fighters forced their way into the Marawi Cathedral and seized the priest, 10 worshippers and 3 church workers. They have threatened to kill the hostages if the government forces unleashed against them are not recalled, Villegas said in a statement. The priest was not a combatant. He was not bearing arms. He was a threat to none. His capture and that of his companions violates every norm of civilized conflict. Al Jazeera's Jamal Ali Nugan, reporting from Mindanao on Wednesday, said there's an exodus of thousands of residents from Marawi. People have been walking for hours to try to escape the violence and get out of a city that was once the most peaceful in the southern Philippines, she said. Abla-Sayaf and MOT have been blamed for bombings, attacks against government forces and kidnappings. They have also beheaded hostages. Mindanao emergency. Tuesday's emergency declaration of the military rule on Mindanao took immediate effect and will last for 60 days, according to Ernesto Orbella, Duterte's spokesperson, said from Russia, where Duterte was on a scheduled 4-day official visit. This is possible on the grounds of the existence of rebellion, Orbella said. Duterte had earlier hinted declaring martial law in Mindanao on May 19, saying, "If I declare martial law in Mindanao, I will solve all that ails the island." Stephen Rood, of the Asia Foundation, said there are several restrictions under the country's current post-dictatorship constitution. There is a time limit of 60 days. Economic collapse. All our reports and daily alert news are backed up by source links. We work very hard to bring you the facts, and we research everything before presenting the report. Subscribe for latest on financial crisis, oil price, global economic collapse, dollar collapse, gold, silver, Bitcoin, global reset, new world order, economic collapse, economic news, political, geopolitical news. Today,
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Special Reports is a daily show that will cover issues surrounding the economic. We talk about martial law is no conspiracy, something big is going on. Former U.S. Congressman and Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul joins Alex Jones of InfoWars, talk with us about one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation to come across Congress in a long time. What Jones calls soft, creeping, frog in the pool. We learn here that martial law in America is no conspiracy theory, as even Democratic Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut is calling S.J. Res. 29 or Declaration of International Martial Law, as seen in his speech in the second video below in full. With a global economy now in freefall and even stores in the U.S. beginning to feel the hit, as shared in this news story from SHTFPLAN's Jeremiah Johnson, who tells us about store inventory levels being reduced nationwide. The warning to stock up now while we still can rings out loud and true, especially with talk of martial law now in the air and within U.S. Congress.